Glorious movie recap here. In today's recap, I'll be talking about a 2020 sci-fi drama movie titled The Midnight Sky. Spoilers ahead. While everyone else on the island is evacuated, Augustine, an elderly man with a terminal illness, is left behind at an observatory on Earth to keep watch on astronauts' efforts to discover another planet capable of supporting human existence. He lives alone in the observatory, sleeping, drinking, and eating alone. He administers blood transfusions to himself and takes medicines throughout the day. Decades before, Augustine was lecturing to hundreds of people about planets in the universe that may potentially host life, such as K23. A woman approaches him to flirt with him at the after-party. They share a few beers, and she challenges him about the legitimacy of the book he recently released about K23. Augustine awakens in the current day and begins searching the computer for missions that are still ongoing. The majority of them are dormant, but one catches his attention. Either appears to be the only expedition left, as Augustine goes over the crew images. He comes upon a photo of a woman he remembers and decides to contact her. Sully, the lady in the photo, is in charge of communication for a 5-person team aboard Either. She worries of being stuck on K23. She's pregnant and gets along well with the rest of the crew, particularly Captain Aid, the father of her kid. When Sully arrives in her operating room, she notices an unusual signal that she cannot identify and tells the rest of the team. Back on Earth, Augustine continues about his business until the observatory's fire alarm goes off. He follows it back to the kitchen, extinguishes it, and drops exhausted on the floor. From his new vantage point, he notices a young girl cowering behind the sink. He is appalled that she has been abandoned. Augustine anxiously tries to call someone on the radio to report the missing girl, but he is unable to reach anybody. Augustine discovers the location of the small girl asleep in quarters in one of the storage lockers. He attempts to convey to her that he would be unable to care for her, but she appears unable or unwilling to talk. Augustine cooks the little girl dinner, and afterwards she draws him a picture of a flower, an iris, which he understands is her name. Augustine attempts again but is still unable to communicate with Either. Iris attempts to sleep with him in his room, but Augustine places her in a nearby room. She returns to Augustine's room in the middle of the night, constructs a small nest in the corner, and sleeps on the floor. Either has also been having communication issues. They haven't been capable of communicating with any other spacecraft or anyone on Earth. They have returned from their trip on K23 with the discovery that the planet is capable of supporting human existence. Iris observes Augustine's blood infusions and sits in the chair next to his to gaze up through the observatory's ceiling at the stars above them. Decades before, a young Augustine is working in his study when the same woman from the party criticizes him for not returning her phone calls. She is dissatisfied with his explanation of being at work and lies to him about phoning to inform him that she is not pregnant after all. She informs him that he is squandering his life and ignoring the people who care about him because he is so preoccupied with his profession. When Augustine goes outside to check on the antenna that controls his communications, he discovers scores of dead birds in the snow. He identifies this as a hint that the poor air has already arrived at the observatory far sooner than expected. He learns that the antenna at the observatory isn't strong enough to reach Either, but the one at Lake Hazen, which was originally a meteorological station, is. He informs Iris that they need to travel to Lake Hazen not just to escape the impending poor air, but also because it is their last chance to reach Either before it is too late. Augustine dresses himself in many layers of thick gear and dresses Iris in the same, presenting her with goggles and a breathing device that he warns her not to remove for any reason. They transfer the most important items from the observatory onto a jet ski. They take off from the observatory and go towards Lake Hazen via the frozen tundra. On Either, the crew spends their time interacting with holograms of their loved ones, or playing 3-dimensional video games and playing cards with one another. An alarm sounds, breaking the silence and informing the crew that their spacecraft has veered off course. Using the signal from K23, they are able to identify their exact location and a way back to Earth, but their new route will take them through unexplored area. Augustine and Iris spend the night in a snow tent. The next day, while traveling, they come across the remnants of a crashed airliner. When Augustine notices a dead youngster in one of the chairs outdoors, he urges Iris to remain where she is while he investigates the rest of the debris. He primarily finds rubble inside, but as he begins to make his way out, a dying guy grabs his foot. The man is severely injured and begs Augustine to help him. Outside, Iris's curiosity gets the best of her and she looks at the body. She is frightened and rushes into the remainder of the plane to be with Augustine, but he pushes her back outside. Augustine, as instructed, shoots the man on the plane, putting him end of his suffering. Augustine gets a flashback of seeing the woman from the party leave him, taking their daughter, whom he had never met. On either, Maya performs an ultrasound on Sully's pregnant tummy and informs her that she is expecting a daughter. She alerts the rest of the group and they immediately begin brainstorming names. Iris discovers a bunker in the distance while riding on the jet ski, so they go there. Augustine inspects it and determines it will be an excellent spot to spend the night. He arranges their gear and leaves the jet ski outside. Augustine notices Iris drawing a portrait of a woman and claims to recognize her. He tells Iris all the good things he recalls about her, and for the first time, Iris speaks out, asking him whether he loved her. The bunker begins to leak that night as it descends beneath the melting ice. Augustine pulls Iris from the bunker and instructs her to flee while he gathers as many of their belongings as he can. He leaves the bunker in time and attempts to flee on the jet ski, but it sinks beneath the ice. He attempts to swim after it, but it sinks too quickly and he almost drowns. He climbs out of the ice and warms up with Iris. They will have to continue their trip to Lake Hazen on foot and with no supplies. Augustine later feeds Iris the remainder of their supper. She is concerned, but he tells her that there will be plenty of food at Lake Hazen. They go through a snowfall, hardly able to see 2 feet in front of them. Augustine spots wolves circling them through the snow and fires at them with his shotgun. He loses track of Iris in the midst of the turmoil and he screams for her, but she doesn't respond. He gives up after a period of seeking and lies down in the snow. He has a glimpse of the woman from the party standing over him and recognizes her as Iris. He grasps her in his arms, relieved to have found her. They arrived to Lake Hazen the next day and immediately went to work attempting to contact either. Sully recognizes Augustine's signal and replies. Sully informs him that they have been unable to contact NASA and inquires as to what has happened to Earth. Their connection becomes distorted as he attempts to explain, and Sully is unable to comprehend him. She loses the signal, and an alert sounds. Either is now in an undiscovered portion of their journey, and the spacecraft is being bombarded with asteroids. The ship is severely damaged, and its communication equipment is entirely wrecked. The crew examines the ship's damage and decides that they will have to rebuild some of its communication systems and travel outside to repair it. Maya, Sully, and Aid will take the trek, which will be Maya's first time leaving the spacecraft while in space. Maya is terrified and vomits multiple times before they go outdoors. Everything looks to be alright once outside the ship. They rebuild the communication system and continue their journey back inside. The spacecraft is once again attacked by asteroids before they reach their destination. When they have subsided, the team checks to make sure everyone is safe. Maya is shocked but unharmed, but when she returns inside, she discovers drops of blood floating up from her suit and into her visor. Aid and Sully get her back into the ship and Mitchell arrives with the medical gear. When they remove Maya's helmet, a big amount of blood floats out of her suit and into the spacecraft. Maya begins to worry, claiming that there is too much blood, and Aid and Mitchell try to patch her wounds, while Sully tries to calm her down. Despite their best attempts, the crew is unable to seal the wound caused by asteroids hitting the spacecraft, and Maya dies. The team mourns their loss, but are quickly diverted when they see Earth for the first time. They are shocked to realize that it appears to be dead and coated with radiation. Either contacts Augustine again, and he informs him that they will not be able to return to Earth. He informs them that he is the sole survivor and that everyone else has been evacuated. He informs them that there are no more ongoing operations and that they are the only ones remaining. The crew is horrified that they will not be able to return home and that their only way out of the ship is to turn around and return to K-23. Tom states unequivocally that he will not return to K-23 and that he must discover what happened to his family. He asks Aid for permission to return to Earth in one of the re-entry pods to look for his wife and children, and Aid agrees. Mitchell tells him about his daughter, who died when she was 4 years old, and how she would have been Maya's age if she were still living. Mitchell asks Tom if he may accompany him back to Earth to retrieve Maya's body, and Tom agrees. Mitchell and Tom bid their goodbyes to Sully and Aid before returning to Earth in the re-entry capsule. Sully contacts Augustine to inform him of what has transpired with the crew and that they intend to return to K-23. Sully tells Augustine that she has always admired his art and is sorry that she will never meet him. He inquires about her name, and she replies, Iris. Augustine asks her to explain K23 to him, and while she does, he decides not to tell her that he is her long-lost father. Augustine's vision of the little child Iris was a delusion all along. Either reaches a communication blackout zone, and the transmission is lost. 8 and Sully are the final survivors, and they return to K23 in the hopes of rebuilding the society. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe, and make sure to turn on notifications for more content. Thanks so much for watching.